You land at the airport. You're tired. You've been traveling for hours. You walk up to the immigration counter. The officer stamps your passport. Everything seems normal. And then he says, "Please step aside and wait over there." That moment, that single moment when you're pulled out of line and told to follow an officer into a separate room, that's happening right now in 2026 at record numbers. And it's not just undocumented people, it's green card holders, visa holders, people who've been traveling to the US for years without any problems. Something has shifted. And if you travel internationally, you need to understand what's happening right now. This is called secondary inspection. And in the first months of 2026, we're seeing more travelers sent to secondary than we've seen in years. This isn't speculation. This is based on reports coming directly from travelers, immigration attorneys across the country, and patterns being observed at major U.S. ports of entry, especially in Texas, especially along the southern border, but also at airports in Houston, Dallas, Miami, Los Angeles, and even New York. So let's talk about what secondary inspection actually is, because a lot of people don't know until it happens to them. When you arrive at a U.S. airport or land border crossing, you go through what's called primary inspection, and that's the first officer you see. The one who looks at your passport, asks you a couple questions, maybe scans your fingerprints. Most people get through that in less than 2 minutes. You get your stamp, you grab your bags, you leave. But sometimes that officer doesn't let you through. Instead, they mark your documents and tell you to go to a separate area. That area is secondary inspection. It's a waiting room, usually plain. Rows of chairs, no phones allowed in some locations, no explanations given right away. You sit, you wait, and you have no idea how long it's going to take. Once you're called, you go into a private room or a cubicle where another officer reviews your entire file. They can ask you anything: where you've been, why you traveled, who you know, what you do for work. They can search your bags, they can go through your phone, they can look at your photos, your messages, your emails. And yes, that is legal under current US law when you're entering the country. Now, here's what's different in 2026. The volume has increased dramatically. Immigration attorneys in Texas, California, and Florida are reporting that their clients who used to travel without issues are now being sent to secondary almost every time they cross. People with valid green cards, people with work visas, people who have been living in the US legally for 10, 15, 20 years. Why is this happening? Because enforcement priorities have changed. According to information published on the official Department of Homeland Security website, there has been a renewed focus on interior enforcement and what they call immigration integrity. That means more scrutiny, more checks, more reviews of people's travel history, visa compliance, and any prior interactions with immigration authorities. And it doesn't take much to get flagged. Let me explain the most common triggers we're seeing right now in 2026. First, travel history. If you've recently traveled to certain countries, especially in Latin America, the Middle East, or parts of Africa, you might get pulled into secondary. It doesn't mean you did anything wrong. It just means the system flagged your passport. Second, visa inconsistencies. Maybe you entered on a tourist visa, but you've been coming to the US a lot. Maybe you stayed longer than usual on your last trip. Maybe your visa is about to expire. Any of that can trigger additional questions. Third, name matches. This one is frustrating because it's often a mistake. Your name might be similar to someone else in a government database. It could be a completely different person. But the system doesn't know that until an officer manually reviews it, so you wait. Fourth, prior overstays. Even if it was years ago, even if it was just a few days, if you ever overstayed a visa, that stays in your record. And in 2026, officers are looking at that more closely than before. Fifth, pending immigration cases. If you have any kind of case with USCIS, even if it's an application for adjustment of status or a work permit renewal, that can cause delays at the border. Officers want to make sure your case is still valid and that you're not violating any conditions. Sixth, asylum history. If you ever applied for asylum, even if you later adjusted to a green card or another status, that history is in your file. And right now, anyone with asylum-related history is getting extra scrutiny, and then there's random selection. Sometimes there's no reason at all. The system just picks you. It's rare, but it happens. Now let's talk about who this is affecting the most. Green card holders are not immune. A lot of people think that once you have your green card, you're safe. That's not true. If you've been outside the US for a long time, or if you've taken multiple trips in a short period, or if there's anything in your record that raises a question, you can be sent to secondary. And in extreme cases, if an officer believes you've abandoned your residency, they can even start removal proceedings. That's rare, but it's possible. Work visa holders are being questioned more, especially H-1B, L-1, and TN visa holders. Officers want to make sure you're still working for the employer who sponsored you. They want to make sure your job duties match what's on your visa application. If anything seems off, they're going to dig deeper. Asylum seekers and people with pending cases are being held for hours. Sometimes they're told to come back for what's called a deferred inspection. That means they don't get a final decision at the airport. They have to go to a local immigration office days or weeks later to finish the process. TPS holders are also feeling the pressure. Even though temporary protected status is a legal immigration status, it's still temporary. And with all the political debate around TPS right now in Congress, officers are being more careful about who they let in and under what conditions. Mixed status families are in a tough spot. Imagine you're a US citizen traveling with your spouse who has a green card and your parents who are visiting on a tourist visa. If any one of you gets pulled into secondary, the whole family has to wait, and that can take hours. Frequent travelers to Latin America are seeing the most impact. If you travel back and forth between the US and Mexico, Central America, or South America on a regular basis, you're much more likely to be selected for secondary, especially if you're crossing by land through Texas. And that brings me to Texas specifically. Right now, Texas border crossings and airports are under intense scrutiny. According to recent reports from immigration advocacy groups and attorneys practicing in the region, there has been a noticeable increase in secondary inspections at ports of entry in El Paso, Laredo, McAllen, Brownsville, and the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Why Texas? Because it's a high traffic area, because it's politically sensitive, and because federal enforcement agencies are under pressure to show results. So what can CBP officers legally do during secondary inspection? They can ask you detailed questions about your life, your work, your family, your finances. You are required to answer truthfully. Lying to a federal officer is a crime. They can search your luggage without a warrant. They can open every bag, every pocket, every container. They can search your electronic devices, your phone, your laptop, your tablet. They can look through your photos, your text messages, your social media apps, your email. You can refuse, but that will likely result in your device being held or you being denied entry. They can take your fingerprints and your photo. They can run background checks. They can call other agencies to verify your information. They can detain you for several hours. There's no set time limit. Some people are in secondary for 30 minutes. Others are there for 6 or 8 hours. And in serious cases, they can deny your entry or start expedited removal proceedings. This usually happens if they believe you lied on your visa application, if you have a criminal record you didn't disclose, or if they think you're trying to immigrate illegally. But here's the important part. You still have rights. You have the right to remain silent if you're asked incriminating questions. But be careful. Refusing to answer basic questions about your travel can make things worse. You have the right to contact an attorney, but only if you're being detained for a long time or if removal proceedings are being started. You don't automatically get a lawyer just because you're in secondary. You have the right to be treated with respect. If you feel you're being discriminated against or harassed, you can file a complaint with CBP through their official website. You do not have to unlock your phone, but refusing might result in your phone being confiscated or you being denied entry. It's a tough choice. There's no perfect answer. So what happens next? Where is all of this going? Politically, we're in a very uncertain time. Congress is debating new immigration enforcement bills. Some lawmakers want even stricter screening at the border. Others are pushing back, saying this level of scrutiny is excessive and discriminatory. The Department of Homeland Security has signaled that enforcement will remain a priority throughout 2026. That means secondary inspections are not going away. If anything, they might increase. There's also talk of expanding biometric screening and using more advanced technology to flag travelers before they even get to the airport. Facial recognition, advanced databases, predictive algorithms. Some of this is already being tested. So if you're planning to travel internationally in 2026, here's what you need to do. First, make sure all your documents are up to date. Your passport, your visa, your green card, check the expiration dates. If something is about to expire, renew it before you travel. Second, carry proof of your ties to the US. If you have a job, bring a letter from your employer. If you own property, bring documentation. If you have kids in school here, bring their school records. This shows you're not trying to stay permanently if you're on a temporary visa, or that you haven't abandoned your residency if you're a green card holder. Third, be honest, always. If an officer asks you a question, tell the truth. Lying will only make things worse. Fourth, stay calm. Secondary inspection is stressful, but getting angry or confrontational will not help. Be polite, be patient, answer the questions. And fifth, consult with an immigration attorney before you travel if you have any concerns. If you have a criminal record, if you've ever overstayed a visa, if you have a pending immigration case, talk to a lawyer first. It could save you a lot of trouble. Look, I know this is heavy. I know it's stressful, but the reality is this is happening right now. And the more informed you are, the better prepared you'll be. If you found this video helpful, please hit that like button. Subscribe to this channel because we're going to keep covering immigration enforcement updates as they happen. And if you or someone you know has gone through secondary inspection recently, drop a comment below and share your experience. It helps others understand what to expect. Share this video with your family, especially anyone who travels frequently. This information could make a real difference for them. Stay informed, stay prepared, and take care of each other.